Hello and welcome back to the Week in Nintendo right here on GVG. I'm your host for this week, as always, Steve Bowling, and we have a lot to discuss here in the world of Nintendo. But before that, happy Halloween. If you're watching this in early access, it is Halloween today. So hello, I hope you're enjoying your day. If you're watching this anywhere else where we provide the Week in Nintendo for free, hey, I hope you had a great Halloween. Hope you had fun. For my part, I'm going to go out trick-or-treating with my kids later tonight. And then I'm going to settle back in here at home and play Luigi's Mansion on NSO, which is a long-held Halloween tradition for me, save for 1 year where I actually got to travel out to California for a preview of Luigi's Mansion 3. Not necessarily on Halloween, but my kids and I were all invited to a media event for Luigi's Mansion 3 way back when, and I road tripped out to California to go to the event. My kids had a bunch of Halloween candy. We played the game together. It was a lot of fun. Great memories, but that was back in the Game Explain days. There's videos about it somewhere, probably on my Twitter or elsewhere. I don't know. But today, this week in Nintendo, we have a lot going on. The first thing is that I can't believe I'm saying this, but a week from now, we're all going to be playing Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. That's just crazy. It feels like I just am not ready yet. I'm a huge Zelda fan. I cannot wait to play this. Age of Imprisonment is going to be awesome. It's going to be a huge event for me, so I'm really excited to dive headfirst into that one as soon as it drops. So the next time we meet here like this, we're going to be talking largely about that game. But that is next week. And this week, we have quite a few things that I'd like to talk about. I have a couple rapid fire reviews for you. We got to talk about the Animal Crossing situation, the backlash to Nintendo's announcement of a Switch 2 edition of New Horizons, and then just kind of generally what is going on with the idea of visual fidelity in games, how people are reacting to stuff like this, and what expectations are in this day and age. But let's talk about what I've been playing, and that's going to lead into our rapid fire reviews for this week. I've had 2 games on deck all week long, and those are Ball Pit and Mortal Kombat Legacy Kollection. And I want to start with Ball Pit because I feel like it is on the cusp of becoming the next big indie thing. This year has been particularly impressive for Switch 2 indies. We obviously had Silksong, and then we had Hades 2, and I know that this might seem sacrilegious to some, but you need to add Ball Pit into that indie rotation of yours because it is a fantastic game. It's published by Devolver Digital, and it has kind of DNA from a lot of Breakout games that are fantastic, and Breakout is actually one of them. So it is a kind of weird mashup of several different genres of game in which you basically just shoot balls around an arena, take out enemies, earn rewards, then you go back up to your camp and you use the rewards you earn to build your camp up, add villagers, and each villager becomes somebody that you can actually use within the pit to further the story along. Each time you complete a run through the pit, you gain a gear. You use gears to upgrade your lift to go further down into said pit and find more challenges to uncover. And this all sounds like something that maybe you don't want to play, but if you like Vampire Survivors, if you like Balatro, if you like Breakout, you're going to find something to enjoy here. And I went in not knowing what to expect, but I sat down and started playing this and then couldn't stop. I was just completely locked in. Everybody that I've shown this game to has picked up a copy and started playing it alongside me. It's out on Switch 2 now. It is just becoming rapidly an obsession. If this drops on mobile, it's going to be near the top of the mobile charts. It just has that one more run quality. Each run takes about 12 to 15 minutes, and then each character has specific strategies and specific balls they can use, and each of these balls have specific powers, and as you go through and you continue to defeat enemies, you'll be able to level up each ball, you'll be able to fuse your balls, phrasing, but there's just so much depth to this that it's kind of crazy. And I find myself just wanting to find new combinations and unlock new things and improve my base. And each time I sit down to play Ball Pit, hours go by without me really noticing because I'm just kind of enjoying it. And on the Switch 2, this is ideal. for, handheld play. You can be watching TV, you can do whatever, because there's no engaging like narrative to this game. There's nothing that really requires beyond just the bare minimum of attention. It's a great way to unwind after a long day. It's just super fun. I can't recommend it enough. If you like those 3 indies that I mentioned, well, if you like Vampire Survivors and Balatro, you're going to find a lot to love here. I promise you, this is absolutely worth your time. One of the best indies of the year in a year where we've had great indies. I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. Now, moving on, we have to talk about Mortal Kombat Legacy Kollection. MK Legacy Kollection is one of my most anticipated games of 2025. I'm a huge Mortal Kombat fan, and these games were foundational to my childhood. These were games that really set me on the path of loving the fighting game genre. In a world where Street Fighter 2 was king, Mortal Kombat was nipping at its heels, and you couldn't go to an arcade in the 90s without seeing these 2 cabinets side by side or back to back and just seeing crowds of kids around them. And I was one of those kids in one of those crowds. And I have to say that it is so nice to have a collection of these games, but, and this is a huge but, I wish that they were implemented just a bit better, especially on Switch 2. I haven't played the game on other platforms, but what I can say is that I found some things that kind of degrade the experience. Let's start with the one and only Switch 2 specific feature, which is local wireless play via game share. So you're able to play the game over game share locally with another Switch user, which some people will say, why not just play on the same screen? I get you, I hear you, but this is how they implemented the feature. And if you do this, I have found at least one way to consistently crash the game. If you play game share in Mortal Kombat 1 arcade version, and you choose Raiden and Sonya, and you play in Shang Tsung's throne room, at the end of any match, the game will crash. It'll just crash every time. And this was something I encountered just by testing the feature out. It was literally one of the first matches I got randomly, and then I started testing further and further. And as I tested, I realized I could reliably crash my game by choosing certain combinations of characters on certain stages in MK1, which was just really disappointing. On top of that, I've seen a lot of audio desync issues, and this isn't even online. This is in offline play. I've seen audio desync issues. Rumble in particular is not very well synchronized. If you do an uppercut in Mortal Kombat 1 arcade mode again, the controller will shake about a noticeable amount, several frames before the uppercut connects or before the sound effect plays. It's just very weird stuff like this. And I found that some of this, at least in my opinion, seems to be tied to the CRT filter in the game. If you play any of these games with the CRT filter on, you may notice some input lag, but if you take it off, then those input issues seem to resolve. The games feel more responsive and faster without the CRT filter, which is kind of a shame because I actually really like the filter that Digital Eclipse put on these games. It feels very accurate to playing on like an old arcade screen. But realistically, if they're going to impact the gameplay from a playability perspective, then that's an issue for me. If you go on social media, you can see that lots of people are flagging lots of issues, right? Some issues with Mortal Kombat 4 that have glitches that just are well-known emulation glitches within the community that weren't fixed for this. Incorrect assets used in different places. Text that was used that shouldn't have been used. There's just a lot of things here that feel like they detract from the overall quality of the package. But at the end of the day, it is still a fairly definitive collection of Mortal Kombat games. And that is something. I hope that Digital Eclipse will fix these, but that's only half of the experience, because the other side of this coin is that, like so many of Digital Eclipse's releases, Mortal Kombat is a museum piece. It takes you through the history of the series in detail that we've never really gotten before, through interviews with other content creators, through Ed Boon and John Tobias and other members of the team who worked on these games. But perhaps the most interesting thing is all of the never before seen footage or rarely seen assets from the early Mortal Kombat days that have made their way into this collection. Stuff like Shang Tsung's original fatality and explanations from the developers as to why these things weren't used and then how they informed the design of the game going forward. This is super interesting stuff. And I wish I could say that it was perfect, but I noticed that if you play games first, you'll notice some substantial audio desynchronization happening with these video vignettes as well. Now, it's a very strange situation because in my experience, if I played a game and I felt the input lag, then I could go over and watch these videos and I would see the audio noticeably desynchronized from the video. Then, if I turned my Switch off and on again, didn't play a game and went straight to the videos, the issue would resolve itself. These feel like things that could have been caught during the QA process, that would have been, pretty easy to find and iron out. As somebody who makes videos for a living, I can spot video desync a mile away. And for some of you, it may not matter. And to be fair, it does nothing to change how interesting the content is. It's just kind of a bummer that at least on Switch 2, these presentation issues exist. I would love to see Digital Eclipse continue to update the game, but I'm going to have to be real with you. Because these issues exist, I mean, there are other things like online play doesn't have lobbies or anything like that, but I don't really mind that because these original games didn't have online play and didn't have lobbies. And I view this more as a preservationist piece than a modernization of these original games. So I'm kind of torn because there's a lot of historical value here. And if you love Mortal Kombat and you're really into the history of the series, there is a lot to love in this collection. But that doesn't excuse the issues they currently have with the presentation of these games, with the bugs in some of them. I would love to see these games emulated more accurately. I would love to see some of these issues fixed. I'd love to see, in one particular game, one of the endings is just not the right version, which I don't know how that happens. But there are other things like Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero is here. Special Forces is here. Those are games that are very hard to get your hands on. And you'd pay more just to get an original copy of those than you would this entire collection. So it really depends on where you kind of place the value of your dollar. But for me, I'm going to have to lower this one down quite a bit and give it a 7. I think if it performed perfectly, we would be talking about at least a 9. But it's just not okay to have these many issues with games that are this old. I would have preferred that Digital Eclipse delayed this collection and let it come out when the physical edition releases next year, or in December, I believe, whenever that comes out. I think they should have delayed this. They should have given it some more time to really nail down the emulation, fix the issues that we're seeing post-release, fix the audio desync bugs, fix the input latency. All of those are things that should be resolved. And for those that do want to play online, there should just be better netcode for this. When you play online and you have lag, the audio just kind of becomes a mess. It becomes very choppy. It becomes very difficult to listen to. Mortal Kombat 4 people can run through each other in specific instances, which is a well-known emulation issue. I would just like to see these fixed. But for now, I have to judge what's in front of me. And what's in front of me is a 7, unfortunately. Not that that's a terrible score, but they could do better here. Those are our reviews for the week. And like I said, Ball Pit, fantastic. Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, something I really wanted to love more than I currently do. But you know what I did love this week was the announcement of Animal Crossing's 3.0 update and the Switch 2 edition upgrade. And I was surprised because as soon as I watched that video, Daniel and I sat down to record a discussion, and we were both very excited, extremely happy about what was announced. And I didn't look at social media or anything, but then after recording, while I was uploading this video, I took a look, and both in our comments here at GVG and on social media, there was a surprising amount of, I don't want to go as far as to say outrage, but people who were very upset over the Animal Crossing Switch 2 edition upgrade. And I have to say, even now, after reading days of these comments, I'm very confused by it. I'm very, I don't want to say like unnerved or concerned. It's not that deep, but I don't understand how angry some people have become at this. So let's break down the situation for those of you who may not follow Animal Crossing closely. You have 2 different things that were announced this week in regards to Animal Crossing New Horizons. you have the Switch 2 upgrade, which adds improved graphics, presumably at 4K resolution. It includes a megaphone so that you can use the Switch 2's built-in mic to talk to your villagers. And it includes mouse mode controls for things like, moving furniture around your house. No word on if that'll work for, terraforming your island or whatever, but at least within the home, within design areas, you're able to use the mouse to click and drag and place things. Cool stuff. That is priced at $5 if you have the game already. Of course, if you want to buy the physical Switch 2 edition, that is $65. On top of that, separately from the Switch 2 upgrade, which means that this stuff comes to all Switch 1 owners and Switch 2 owners, whether you upgrade or not, Nintendo announced the 3.0 update for New Horizons, which includes, frankly, a whole ton of stuff. You get a hotel run by a captain and his family. You're able to earn hotel tickets for unique new pieces of furniture and clothing. You're able to add mannequins in there where you can put out outfits that your guests can wear, including those who come to visit you by playing online. Quick note, if you get the Switch 2 update, you're also able to play with up to 12 players online. I don't know how many people are going to do that. Not me. I don't have 12 people I want to play with. But on top of the free side of things, you also get a bunch of collab items for Legend of Zelda, Lego, Splatoon. Those, the Nintendo IP ones are tied to Amiibo. They showed that like Toolin can come live in your village. You can get the Master Sword. You can get some Zonai stuff from Tears of the Kingdom. You can have Mineru, which I assume is going to be tied to the Mineru Amiibo that doesn't yet have a release date. For Splatoon, it's very similar. You can scan your Splatoon Amiibos and you can get stuff. You have the two, gosh, I don't remember their names, but together it's Ceviche. But you have two villagers who are now cosplaying members of Deep Cut, Shiver and Fry specifically. You have a bunch of Splatoon themed like shirts and hats and stuff, so you can look like an Octoling or a Squid Kid if you want. Nintendo added just a whole lot of new features, and people were really kind of just unhappy about it, and that seemed very strange to me. I didn't see a lot of people saying that like the 3.0 update was bad. In fact, I feel like there's kind of universal praise for that. So I think we can set that aside a bit. But I feel like it ties in a way that I'll explain in a bit. The 3.0 update, chock full of good stuff. It's free. I don't think anybody really hates that. What I'm surprised by is that people seem to have a really adverse reaction to the Switch 2 upgrade. And if you're one of those, I would love to know why. But the most common refrain that I've heard is that people are upset that it isn't 60 FPS on Switch 2. And while I understand, I think that there is something of a narrative in gaming lately that if it's not 60 FPS, it's garbage. And I don't subscribe to that ideology because I think what is more criminal is a kind of fluctuating frame rate, right? Like one of the greatest offenders on Switch 2 in recent memory was Hitman. And Hitman was above 30 FPS most of the time, but never got to 60. And I think that was the issue, right? Like being between 30 and 45 FPS is way worse than just being at a locked 30. In fact, IO Interactive went back and instituted a 30 FPS cap on Hitman 2, which made the game, I keep saying Hitman 2, Hitman World of Assassination, which makes it a much more playable experience. It is much more fun to play at 30 FPS than it is in this weird range. And the game looks good. It performs a lot more smoothly. And I think that was the right move. I think that a consistent frame rate is better than a high frame rate, if that makes sense. If you have a high but inconsistent frame rate, and let's be real, 45 is higher than 30. It's a 50% increase, right? But it doesn't feel good because it can't stay there. And that's really the issue here. I don't think that it makes a whole lot of sense for Animal Crossing to go above 30, at least in its current form, because it's not a real reflex-intensive gameplay experience. Animal Crossing is meant to be slow and relaxing and chill. And do I think that they could have optimized the Switch 2 version to hit 60 FPS? Yeah, maybe. But it's more difficult with a game that you've already built because you can't make cuts. You can't reduce LOD. You can't reduce things to then make the experience hit 60 FPS. And I saw people saying they want a toggle or they want performance options. That just feels almost like a bit much for Animal Crossing of all things. Like, I don't expect graphics options in games like Super Mario Wonder or New Super Mario Brothers or Tropical Freeze. I expect them to just work at the frame rate they've been designed for. And obviously New Horizons was designed for 30 FPS. There's probably a lot more work that goes into upgrading a game like that to a 60 FPS presentation than people might think. I don't think it's as simple as just flipping a toggle and saying, hey, here we go, let's QA the whole game at 60 FPS. You have to account for, every possible thing that you can do in that game. And you can fill an island with tons of stuff. And in fact, on the original Switch, we did see that you could trigger some slowdown below that 30 FPS cap by just filling your island with junk. John did some testing with it when the Switch 2 came out, and he was able to get frame drops to occur on the Switch 1, which leveled out completely on the Switch 2 without an update patch. So I think that that's kind of what we're looking at here, is this game was designed, to give you the freedom to do whatever you want while maintaining mostly in 99.9% of cases, a locked 30 FPS. And realistically, it's going to look a lot worse if you try to push to 60 and you're hitting 50 more than you're hitting 60. That would make the game feel worse than just having a tight locked 30 FPS all the time. And I really think that's kind of what we're up against here. Now, could you have just maybe left the resolution the same and ensured a 60 FPS cap? Yeah, probably. But I think then you'd get kind of the inverse of the current issue, right? People would say, great, it's 60 FPS, but it doesn't look any better. Which, to be fair, I don't think Animal Crossing New Horizons looks bad in its current form. So I think that there's just going to be kind of a lot of disagreement on this issue. But I think what baffles me the most about this is that it's a $5 upgrade. It's not 10 like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were. And I know that people are going to point to Zelda notes for that. But when you consider the amount of change, it really is kind of just the same level of kind of minimal change, right? Like you get a thing added. In this case, it's Zelda notes. In Animal Crossing New Horizons, you get the megaphone, which is at least an in-game item. But Zelda notes did add new voice lines for Zelda, where she explains things as you go through. I don't know about you, but I didn't end up using that very much. So to me, I see this as kind of a correction in the right direction. Like we're seeing a Switch 2 upgrade, one of the cheapest ones ever offered. But I can't help but feel like if Nintendo tied this to NSO, then people would have been a lot happier. That if they had said, hey, if you have NSO, you can play this. They already do have some NSO perks in the 3.0 update, though. If you have NSO, you can play games on consoles returning from the GameCube days, which I think is super, super cool. But yeah, I'm not sure where we kind of went astray here, where we ended up with the idea that, 60 FPS, while it is wonderful for many, many games, I don't think 30 FPS should be a dirty word anymore. I don't think that it should be considered to be awful. I want to ask all of you watching or listening, wherever you are, this question, because this is something I posited on social media the other day. If you have a long think about your top 10 games of all time, do all of those run at a perfect 60 FPS all the time? I'm sure for some of you that's true, but I'm going to wager that for the majority of you out there, that at least one game on your top 10, it doesn't run very well. For me, that is No More Heroes on the Wii. I recently replayed the intro of that game, and I can tell you that even in the opening cutscene, it slows down to like 15 FPS. And I still love that game because games are more about the content, about how they make you feel than they are about the specs. And I think that this is one of those cases where we should embrace that a little bit. Now, to be clear, if you don't like the Animal Crossing update, just don't buy it then. I think that is really, it's as simple as that. If you don't like it, vote with your wallet and don't buy it, because you'll still be able to play all of the new 3.0 update stuff. You'll still get the NSO games. You'll still get the hotel. You'll still get the Dream Islands. You'll still get the Amiibo integration. You'll still get the Lego stuff. You just won't get like the 3 things that the Switch 2 upgrade does. You won't get the higher resolution, the mouse control, the megaphone. If those don't speak to you, then don't give Nintendo your $5 and just enjoy all the free stuff they did. I'm sure that this is a way to maybe offset the development cost of adding all that stuff in the 3.0 update, and I'm happy to upgrade. I personally just am going to goof around with the megaphone, the mouse controls, especially if they work for terraforming, though I will bet they won't. That's enough for me, even if it's just for decorating my home and decorating the Happy Home Paradise DLC, or even the hotel stuff. Like, having mouse control for that is going to be good enough for me to give you $5. $5 for me. It doesn't feel like too big of an ask, but for some of you it does, and you're not wrong for that. I just think that, that the answer is to just not buy it, right? And I think that it's strange to me that we live in a world in which people are really angry about this. So I know that Daniel and I got called some not so nice names in the comments just for saying we liked it. So I guess I'm doubling down. I still like it. But if you don't like it, that you're not wrong for that. It's just a difference of opinion, and we'll have to agree to disagree on that. And with that, I think it's time to answer some of our viewer questions. So if you don't know, you can head over to patreon.com/gvgaming, where for as little as $5 a month, you get early access to each and every episode of The Week in Nintendo, and you get to ask questions just like this one. This one comes from Larkrin, who writes, "What do you think of Nintendo's model of doing a Direct every month since the Switch's debut? June, DK Bonanza; July, Partner Direct; August, Air Riders Direct; September, Major Direct; October, Air Riders Direct 2. What do you think November's Direct is going to be, if there will be one?" Well, I mean, I'm a fan of Directs. Obviously, we've gone a long time without them in the past, and so I think it's a good thing that we have them now. But I will say, I mentioned this in a previous episode. The Air Riders Direct, both of them didn't really do much for me, other than inform me that, there's going to be a test demo for this game, which I will try. I saw a lot of people incorrectly saying in the comments that I was deriding Kirby Air Riders without having played it. I have played it. I played it at PAX West 2025, and it didn't really do much for me. Daniel loved the demo we played. So for those of you saying I haven't played it, sorry to let you down, but I have. Now let's talk about a November Direct, right? Will there be one? I don't know. I think there's a good possibility, because if you want to sell as many copies of Metroid Prime 4 as you can, you want to have a showcase for that game. I don't feel like we've been shown enough of the game. There's obviously a core concept that we're all missing. John kind of mentioned in a video previously that he felt that Metroid Prime 4 has a trailer problem. That's not a take that I agree with. I've really enjoyed the trailers for Metroid Prime 4. I've enjoyed what little of it I've played. I got to play a demo way back in April at this point. So I'm very on board for Metroid Prime 4. But I do feel like you probably, especially during the holiday shopping season, want to get that game out in front of as many eyeballs as you can. And the way to do that would be a Direct, right? To promote it to your core audience. And those are folks that, may be saving money right now for holiday gifts for people. Obviously, Black Friday is around the corner, and Metroid Prime 4 is going to miss that shopping holiday, that very crucial shopping holiday. So you may want to get a Direct out before Black Friday to remind people that Metroid Prime 4 is just over the horizon, and that you want to pick it up. Obviously, that'll happen sometime after the 6th of November, if it happens at all, because you're going to want to give Age of Imprisonment time to breathe. You're going to want people to buy that one too. So I think somewhere around a week after Age of Imprisonment would be a really smart time to show a Direct for that, because you don't want it to be too close to Black Friday where you don't have attention on it, but you also want to remind people before they go out and spend all of that disposable income that you've got another game around the corner that is sure to really rile up the Nintendo fans in your lives. So if we get a November Direct, I think it heavily focuses on Metroid Prime 4. But I really wouldn't lock that in. I'm not feeling super confident about it, but I mean, Nintendo loves to surprise. And like you said, we have had a direct every month since the release of the Switch 2, which is just kind of wild, to be honest. So we'll see. I wouldn't count on it, but I wouldn't count it out either. But thank you for the question. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. This one is from Dat Alpha Lion, who writes, what do you think is the greatest Nintendo compilation out there? For me, those would be either Kirby's Dream Collection or Metroid Prime Trilogy. I love the former for its archival content and extras, and I love the latter for its sublime Wii controls. For me, this is an easy one. Super Mario All-Stars. And not 3D All-Stars, not the 25th anniversary on Wii, like the SNES Super Mario All-Stars. Because when you think about it, we got those games not just, one, it was in an era where this wasn't really happening yet. It was novel to do a compilation, and we got them remade for the SNES, like with, current gen cutting edge visuals, which is a weird thing to say about Super Nintendo games, but that's absolutely what that was when we got it. So Nintendo really, it would be the equivalent of them putting out Super Mario 3D All-Stars today, but with like 16:9, 4K graphics, 120 FPS, like with every asset redone and just full on remakes and getting a collection of them, right? That to me is kind of the equivalent of what we got back in the Super NES days. We'll probably never see that again. I would love for them to do more archival content. Obviously, the big draw for me with MK Legacy Collection is that archival content that they included. But Nintendo doesn't really like to do that as often as they should. So hopefully we'll get there. But yeah, for me, that's an easy answer. Thank you so much for the question. Let's go ahead and move on. We've got Tuxpang Returns, who writes, I think it's safe to say NSO as a service has grown into a solid value proposition by this point. With that said, given the nature of the industry with these services, do you think we'll get a price increase as the service continues to get new features and additions over time? And also, what are some things that could be added to justify this hypothetical increase in your eyes? So this is an interesting comment, and I think Nintendo has done very well with NSO. I think that they have positioned it as something very valuable to most subscribers. And what they've done is to avoid price hikes on the service, they instead add additional services in higher tiers. So for me, it's not so much of a question of are they going to raise the price or are they going to add additional tiers on top of what we have? And I'm going to say that I believe the answer is no. And the reason I believe the answer is no is because we already have expansion pack, NSO expansion pack. And I think that what you do when you start adding more tiers is you add kind of this sense of fatigue, right? Like, oh, I have to pay X number of dollars to get GameCube and N64. And that is only, GameCube is only if I have a Switch 2 as well. So to buy in, to make your subscription as valuable as possible, you have to buy Nintendo's latest hardware, which is obviously at quite the premium, and you have to pay more for your annual subscription. I think that Nintendo is really sensitive to the fact that gamers are being squeezed quite a bit by, economic circumstances, if you will. And so the solution here is to provide other different additional value, a way to get more revenue, optional ways, which is really important. So you don't need to look much further than Virtual Boy here to understand what's going on. Nintendo has announced that they're going to release Virtual Boy in February of 2026. But if you want the best experience, if you really want to play Virtual Boy the right way, you can buy the $100 headset add-on that essentially replicates the full experience, right? You just slide your Switch 2 in there. You've got the lens, each individual lens. It's being shot right into each eye. You could do the cheaper, $20-something cardboard version too. But obviously it won't be as kind of premium feeling, right? As the Virtual Boy experience. So I think that's an interesting way to drive up your revenue from your subscribers without making the monthly spend higher for everyone, because Not a lot of people are going to go for the $100 Virtual Boy dock, but some will, and they will offset the cost for a ton that don't. That's my belief anyway. Obviously, I have no idea how the economics are going to work out for this, but I could see them going further than this. We've all seen the patents by now for a USB-C second display for the Switch 2. Now, obviously, that screams DS or even 3DS. And I could see Nintendo continuing down this route. If you have a Switch 2, which you already spent hundreds of dollars on, and you have expansion pack on NSO, which is a premium on top of the subscription fee, then we're going to give you DS. And those DS ROMs cost them nothing, right? Because they can dig into their own first party releases without having to pay anything out to anyone. And I think that's a really key differentiator here, right? Nintendo leans more on their own first party titles than they do any third party titles. And I think that that's going to be what really makes the difference here, because they don't have to pay themselves anything to provide Luigi's Mansion or Super Mario 64 or Sunshine or Pikmin, or any Zelda. They don't have to pay out a licensor for any of those. So it costs them literally nothing. They just have to, have the emulator already done and available, which Nerd is going to want to work on for any number of reasons, and then put their own ROMs into those emulators and do the development spend on QA. You should be able to cover that with the cost of everybody's monthly subscriptions, not to mention the profits you're making elsewhere. The handful of third-party games that make their way into NSO, they're probably getting a fee. They're probably getting some kind of money, but I don't think they're getting like a cut of everyone's subscription revenue the way Game Pass does, or however Game Pass manages to give people money. But you can offset all of these things by offering additional hardware. So I could see Nintendo saying, hey, DS is coming to Switch Online. Here is, maybe even they say DS and 3DS are coming to Switch Online. And they do a Virtual Boy again. Hey, you can play these with just an emulated DS screen on your Switch 2, or you can give us $100 and we'll give you a clip-on 2D screen for your 3DS or for your Switch 2. So you can play DS games with two screens, and that'll be how we handle it. And there will be no goofy border. It'll just kind of work. And then if you really want to get fancy, let's say for $249, we'll sell you a 3D top display that can play both DS and 3DS games. You've got the slider back. You've got everything that was really cool about those original 3D displays on the 3DS. But now you can play those on your Switch 2. You can clamshell it. You can do whatever, but it's going to come at a significantly higher cost. And of course, the other solution is to just play all your 3DS games in 2D. Who knows? Or maybe they just do a 2D screen and say, hey, 3DS games were cool without the 3D. Forget about the 3D. They themselves released the 2DS. So who knows? But I think those are your kind of solutions around that problem. You get to these things by just having the ability to use, to sell your players other things that don't require an ongoing increase in subscription price. Because I feel that Nintendo, of all the big three, kind of faces the affordability problem somehow more than the others, even though all their hardware is more expensive. The typical Nintendo player wants a lower spend on their games. And maybe that's just repercussions from the Wii era where they were $10 cheaper than everyone else. And now, everything is way too expensive. But yeah, that would be my guess. Anyway, one final question and then we're out. Thank you for that question, by the way. This one comes from Aramis, who writes, the timed DK Bonanza event tied to the DLC got me thinking. Between that, Switch Icons, various Pokemon events, free and early demos, Splatfests, even full games like Mario 35, Nintendo does a lot of timed stuff on their ecosystem. I'm curious to know your thoughts and if you try to partake in most things. I tend to not because of the timed nature. It's hard to explain, but it's a feeling like I know I'm going to forget about it, so I unconsciously don't put importance on it. This is an interesting one. Mario 35, I absolutely partook in. It was a limited time event, in one of my favorite franchises, in one of the best franchises in gaming history. I had to do it. And I played a lot of Mario 35. In fact, there's a vibrant fan community keeping Mario 35 alive even now. There are fan servers out there, that kind of thing. If you know where to look, you can find them. But unfortunately, Mario 35, is long gone, and I am sad about that. I used to try to participate in every Splatfest. I just don't do that anymore. And as far as, Switch icons and stuff like that, Donkey Kong Bonanza DLC, I only have so much room in my life for games demanding that I play them at a specific time. But I think what drew me to these was the idea, growing up and learning about the Satellaview and the fact that they did like broadcasts within the Satellaview, and that then much of those assets were considered lost media. They were lost to time forever. And fans tried to put them back together and find recordings and stuff like that to rebuild these games the way they were originally presented. And even now, those are harder things to do. So having the opportunity to partake in these kind of temporary events makes me feel like 20 years from now, when another generation of YouTubers has taken over and they're talking about these things, I can sit back and watch those videos and say, oh yeah, I remember playing that. That was cool. Sorry you didn't get to, but it was really cool for those of us that were there. And while preservation is in a much better place these days than it was back then, and those experiences will get to persist to a degree, like you can play, fan-made Splatfests on the Wii U even right now. I'm sure that they've likely either almost got it or have got it working for original Switch 1 games if you play those on emulator. I don't know, but it's a wildly different world than it was back in the Super Famicom days, the N64 days. But I do find myself wanting to collect those things, but realistically, if I care about everything, then I also care about nothing. So I have to pick and choose the things that I'm willing to peel my attention away from to do. So Splatfest, unfortunately for me, just kind of fell by the wayside a while ago. I tend to play them if I'm actively playing the game at that time, but realistically, Splatoon is a series where the skill ceiling climbs so high that if you bow out for a while, you will come back and realize that you are no longer a force to be reckoned with, and that time passed for me quite some time ago. Aside from that, I think it's also just, we have a limited amount of time to play the things we want, and had I been doing DK Bonanza DLC and stuff like that, I wouldn't have discovered how much I love Ball Pit. I wouldn't have been able to discover how unfortunate some of the issues with Mortal Kombat Legacy Kollection are. I would have had less time to discover more games that I love. So I try to play as many things as possible, try to have as many experiences as possible. That's why I still, even though it's been 2 weeks, have not finished the post game of Pokemon Legends ZA. I still want to do that as well. And then I've got, Luigi's Mansion that I want to re-experience. And before you know it, we will be playing Age of Imprisonment. So there's just only so much time. So while I both agree and disagree with you, Aramis, thank you so much for the question. And that's going to be where we wrap the Week in Nintendo for this week. Thank all of you so much for watching or listening, however you enjoy the Week in Nintendo. I thank you for being here and spending some of your time with me. I hope you all are happy, safe, and healthy, and I hope you all have had a happy Halloween. And I will see you right here next week to talk about Age of Imprisonment on the Week in Nintendo. Bye now.